Chapter 15. Even in Sicily, a land where men killed each other with the same ferocious enthusiasm with which the Spaniards slaughtered bulls, the murderous madness of the citizens of Corleone inspired a universal dread. Rival families exterminated each other in a quarrel over a single olive tree. Neighbors might kill each other over the amount of water one took from the communal stream. A man could die from love, that is, if he looked too disrespectfully at a wife or daughter. Even the cool-headed friends of the friends succumbed to this madness, and their different branches warred to death in Corleone until Don Croce brought them to peace. In such a town, Stefan Andolini had earned the nickname of Fra Diavolo, Brother Devil. Don Croce had summoned him from Corleone and instructed him. He was to join Giuliano's band and win their confidence. He was to stay with them until Don Croce gave orders as to his future course of action. Meanwhile, he was to send back information as to Giuliano's real strength, the loyalty of Passatempo and Terranova. Since Pisciotta's loyalty was unquestioned, there remained only to evaluate the young man's weaknesses. And if the opportunity arose, Andolini was to kill Giuliano. Andolini had no fear of the great Giuliano. Also, since he was red-headed, and redheads were so rare in Italy, Stefan Andolini secretly believed he had been excused from the rules of virtue. As a gambler believes his system can never lose, Stefan Andolini believed himself so cunning he could never be outwitted. He picked two young picciotti to go with him, that is, apprentice killers, who had not yet been admitted to the mafia but hoped for that honor. They journeyed into the mountain haunts of Giuliano carrying knapsacks and lupare, and sure enough were picked up by a roving patrol headed by Pisciotta. Pisciotta listened to Stefan Andolini's story with an impassive face. Andolini told him that the Carabinieri and security police were looking for him because of the murder of a socialist agitator in Corleone. This was quite true. What Andolini did not say was that the police in Carabinieri had no proof and were merely seeking him for questioning. A questioning that would be more kindly than exhaustive due to the influence of Don Croce. Andolini also told Pisciotta that the two picciotti with him were men who were also being sought by the police as co-conspirators in the killing. This was also true. But as he was telling this story, Stefan Andolini felt a mounting uneasiness. Pisciotta was listening with the expression of a man who has met someone he has known before, or of whom he has heard a great deal. Andolini said he had come into the mountains in the hope of joining Giuliano's band, and then he played his trump card. He had the stamp approval from Giuliano's father himself. He, Stefan Andolini, was a cousin of the great Don Vito Corleone in America. Pisciotta nodded. Andolini went on. Don Vito Corleone had been born an Andolini in the village of Corleone. His father killed, himself hunted as a boy. He had escaped to America where he had become the great Godfather. When he had returned to Sicily to wreak vengeance on his father's murderers, Stefan Andolini had been one of his picciotti. Thereafter he had visited the Don in America to receive his reward. While there he had met Giuliano's father, who worked as a bricklayer on the Don's new mansion on Long Island. They had become friends, and Andolini, before he came into the mountains, had stopped in Montelepre to receive the blessing of Salvatore Giuliano Sr. Pisciotta's face became thoughtful as he listened to this story. He distrusted this man, his red hair, his face of a murderer. And Pisciotta didn't like the look of the two picciotti with Malpello, for so he called him in the Sicilian style. Pisciotta said to him, "I'll take you to Giuliano, but keep your lupara strapped to your shoulders until he's spoken to you. Don't unsling them without permission." Stefan Andolini grinned wildly and said with the utmost affability, "But I recognize you, Aspano. I trust you. Take my lupara off my shoulder, and your men can do the same with my picciotti here. After we speak with Giuliano, I'm sure he'll return our guns." Pisciotta said, "We're not pack animals to carry your weapons for you. Carry them yourselves." And he led the way through the mountains to Giuliano's hideout on the edge of the cliff overlooking Monte Lepre. More than 50 of the band were scattered around the cliff, cleaning guns and repairing equipment. Giuliano was seated at the table, watching through his binoculars. Pisciota talked to Giuliano before he had the new recruits brought forward. He told all the circumstances, and then he said, "Turi, he seems a little moldy to me." Moldy, the Sicilian idiom for a man who informs. "And you think you've seen him before?" Giuliano asked. "Or heard of him," Pisciota said. "He is familiar to me somehow, but red-headed men are rare. I should remember him." Giuliano said quietly, "You heard about him from La Venera. She called him Malpello. She didn't know his name was Andolini. She told me about him too. He joined her husband's band. A month later her husband was ambushed and killed by the Carabinieri. La Venera didn't trust him either. He was full of little tricks," she said. Silvestro came over to them. "Don't trust that redhead. I've seen him at Palermo headquarters for private visits with the Commandant of Carabinieri." Giuliano said, "Go down to Monte Lepre and bring my father here. Meanwhile, keep them under guard." Pisciota sent Terranova to fetch Giuliano's father, and then he went to the 3 men, who were sitting on the ground. He bent down and picked up Stefan Andolini's weapon. Members of the band encircled the 3 men like wolves surrounding a fallen prey. "You don't mind if I relieve you of the task of caring for this weapon now?" Pisciota asked with a grin. Stefan Andolini looked startled for a moment, his face twisting into a grimace. Then he shrugged. Pisciota tossed a lupara to one of his men. He waited for a few moments, making sure his men were ready. Then he reached down to take the lupare from Andolini's 2 picciotti. One of them, more from fear than malice, pushed Pisciota away and put his hand on his shotgun. In the next moment, quickly as a snake bearing its tongue, a knife appeared in Pisciota's hand. His body darted forward and the knife cut the picciotto's throat. A fountain of pink blood burst into the clear mountain air and the picciotto slumped over on his side. Pisciota was straddling his body, leaning down, and another quick stroke finished the job. Then, with a series of quick kicks, he rolled the body into a gully. The other men of Giuliano's band had sprung to their feet, leveling their guns. Andolini, sitting on the ground, raised his hands in the air and looked around him beseechingly. But the other picciotto lunged for his weapon and tried to bring it around. Passatempo, standing behind him and grinning with enjoyment, emptied his pistol into the man's head. The shots echoed through the mountains. They all remained frozen, Andolini pale and shaken with fear, Passatempo holding his pistol. And then Giuliano's voice from the edge of the cliff said quietly, "Get rid of the bodies and tie that Malpello to a tree until my father comes." It was after dusk, almost 7 hours later, that Giuliano's father was finally brought into the camp. Stefan Andolini was released from his tree and brought over to the cave lit with kerosene lamps. Giuliano's father was angry when he saw Andolini's condition. "But this man is my friend," he said to his son. "We both worked for the Godfather in America. I told him he could come and join your band, that he would be well treated." He shook hands with Andolini and said, "I apologize. My son must have misunderstood or heard some gossip about you." He paused for a moment, troubled. It distressed him to see his old friend so full of fear, for Andolini could barely stand. Andolini was sure he would be killed. This was all a charade. The back of his neck ached as the muscles tensed to receive the bullets. He almost wept at his own brashness that had made him underestimate Giuliano. The quick killings of his 2 picciotti had sent him into shock. Signor Giuliano sensed that his friend was in mortal danger from his son. He said to him, "Turi, how often do I ask you to do something for me? If you have anything against this man, forgive him and let him go. He was kind to me in America, and he sent you a gift when you were christened. I trust him and hold his friendship dear." Giuliano said, "Now that you have identified him, he will be treated as an honored guest." If he wishes to remain as a member of my band, he is welcome." Giuliano's father was taken back to Montelepre by horse so that he could sleep in his own bed. And after he was gone, Giuliano spoke to Stefan Andolini alone. "I know about you and Candelaria," he said. "You were a spy for Don Croce when you joined Candelaria's band. A month later, Candelaria was dead. His widow remembers you. From what she told me, it wasn't hard for me to figure out what happened. We Sicilians are good at putting together puzzles of treacheries. Bands of outlaws are disappearing. The authorities have become amazingly clever. I sit on my mountain and think all day. I think of the authorities in Palermo. They have never been so clever before. And then I learned that the Minister of Justice in Rome and Don Croce are hand in glove. And we know, you and I, that Don Croce is clever enough for both of them. So then it is Don Croce who is clearing away these bandits for Rome. And then I think soon it will be my turn to be visited by the spies of Don Croce. And I wait and I wait, and I wonder why the dawn is taking so long. For, with all modesty, I am the biggest prize of all. And then today I see the three of you in my binoculars. And I think, ha, it's Malpelo again. I will be glad to see him. But I must kill you all the same. I won't distress my father so your body will disappear." Stefan Andolini lost his fear for a moment in his outrage. "You would deceive your own father?" he shouted. "You call yourself a Sicilian son?" He spat on the ground. "Then kill me and go straight down to hell." Piscioda, Terranova, and Passatempo were also astonished, but they had been astonished many times in the past. Giuliano, who was so honorable, who prided himself on keeping his word, who spoke always of justice for everyone, would suddenly turn and do something that seemed to them so villainous. It was not that they objected to him killing Andolini. He could kill 100 Andolinis, 1,000. But that he should break his word to his father and deceive him seemed to them unforgivable. Only Corporal Silvestro seemed to understand and said, "He can't endanger all our lives because his father is soft-hearted." Giuliano said to Andolini in a quiet voice, "Make your peace with God." He motioned to Passatempo, "You will have 5 minutes." Andolini's red hair seemed to bristle all over his head. He said frantically, "Before you kill me, speak to the Abbot Manfredi." Giuliano stared at him with amazement, and the red-headed man spoke in an outpouring of words. "You once said to the abbot that you owed him a service, that he could ask you for anything." Giuliano remembered his promise well. How did the man know about it? Andolini continued, "Let us go to him, and he will beg for my life." Piscioda said contemptuously, "Tori, it will take another day to send a messenger and get his answer back. And does the abbot have more influence with you than your own father?" Giuliano astonished them again. "Bind his arms and put a halter on his feet so that he can walk but cannot run. Give me a guard of 10 men. I'll bring him to the monastery myself, and if the abbot does not ask for his life, he can make his last confession. I'll execute him and give his body to the monks for burial." Giuliano and his band arrived at the monastery gates as the sun was rising and the monks were going out to work the fields. Torri Giuliano watched them, a smile on his lips. It was only 2 years ago that he had gone into the fields with these priests, wearing his brown cloak and the crumpled black American fedora on his head. He remembered how this amused him. Who would have dreamed then of his future ferocity? A nostalgia came for those old days of peace working in the fields. The abbot himself was coming toward the gate to greet them. The tall, black-robed figure hesitated when the prisoner stepped forward, then opened his arms. Stefan Andolini rushed to embrace the old man, kissed him on both cheeks, and said, "Father, these men are going to kill me. Only you can save me." The abbot nodded. He held out his hands to Giuliano, who came forward to embrace him. Giuliano understood everything now. The peculiar accent on the word "father" was not how a man addressed his priest, but as a son addressed his parent. The abbot said, "I ask you for this man's life as a boon to me." Giuliano took the ropes off Andolini's arms and feet. "He is yours," Turi Giuliano said. Andolini was sagging to the ground. The fear rushing out of his body made him weak. The abbot supported him with his own frail frame. He said to Giuliano, "Come into my dining room. I will have your men fed, and the three of us can talk about what we must do." He turned to Andolini and said, "My dear son, you are not yet out of danger. What will Don Croce think when he learns of all this? We must take counsel together or you are lost." The abbot had his own small coffee room and the three men sat comfortably. Cheese and bread were brought for the two younger men. The abbot turned and smiled sadly at Giuliano. "One of my many sins. I fathered this man when I was young. Ah, nobody knows the temptations of a parish priest in Sicily. I did not resist them. The scandal was covered up and his mother was married to an Andolini. A great deal of money passed and I was able to rise in the church. But the irony of heaven no man can foretell. My son grew up to be a murderer. And that is the cross I have to bear, though I have so many of my own sins to answer for." The abbot's tone changed when he turned to Andolini. He said, "Listen to me carefully, my son. For a second time you owe your life to me. Understand your first loyalty. It is now Giuliano. You cannot go back to the Don. He will ask himself, why did Turi spare your life and kill the other two? He will suspect treachery and that will be your death. What you must do is confess everything to the Don and ask to remain with Giuliano's band. That you will give him information and serve as a link between the friends of the friends and Giuliano's army. I will go to the Don myself and tell him the advantages of this. I will also tell him that you will remain faithful to Giuliano, but that will not be to his disadvantage. He will think you will betray this man here who spared your life. But I tell you, if you do not remain faithful to Giuliano, I will damn you to hell forever. You will bear your father's curse to the grave." He addressed himself again to Giuliano. "So now I ask you a second favor, my dear Turi Giuliano. Take my son into your band. He will fight for you and do your bidding, and I swear he will be faithful to you." Giuliano thought about this carefully. He was sure he could, with time, secure Andolini's affection, and he knew the man's devotion to his father, the abbot. The chances of betrayal were therefore small and could be guarded against. Stefan Andolini would be a valuable sub-chief in the operations of his band, but even more valuable as a source of information about the empire of Don Croce. Giuliano asked, "And what will you tell Don Croce?" The abbot paused for a moment. "I will speak to the Don. I have influence there. And then we shall see. Now, will you take my son into your band?" "Yes, by my sworn word to you," Giuliano said. "But if he betrays me, your prayers will not be swift enough to catch him on his way to hell." Stefan Andolini had lived in a world of little trust, which perhaps was why over the years his face had become formed in such a murderer's mask. He knew that in the coming years he would be like a trapeze artist, constantly teetering on the wire of death. There was no safe choice. It comforted him that the spirit of mercy that radiated from Giuliano's person had saved him. But he had no illusions. Torre Giuliano was the only man who had ever made him afraid. From that day Stefan Andolini was a member of Giuliano's band, and in the years to come he became so known for his ferociousness and religious piety that his nickname, Fra Diavolo, became famous all over Sicily. The piety came from the fact that every Sunday he went to Mass. He usually went into the town of Villaba, where Father Benjamino was the priest, and in the confessional he told the secrets of Giuliano's band to his confessor to be relayed to Don Croce, but not the secrets Giuliano ordered him not to tell.